I recently started Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, and my initial impression is that this could be the most underrated game that Nintendo has put out in a very long time. In this video, I want to talk through what I think is great about Mysterious Book, but also why I think Nintendo basically messed up the marketing of this title and perhaps how they might fix it going forward. So first of all, let's just talk through the game's strengths and why I think it is an absolute belter of a title. For one thing, it has this new approach. Instead of starting with the aesthetic, they started, as they confirmed in recent interviews, by looking at Yoshi's innate powers and seeing what could come of that. So the fact that he can lick, the fact that he can tail flick, and how he might start to interact with the world and the creatures around. And this has developed into an anti-platformer style. This is my words, not theirs, but if you look at it, normally you have animals which are to be stomped on. Here they're to be studied. Sometimes the bosses aren't to be defeated, but actually you need to rescue the bosses from some kind of terrible situation. You don't get damage in the game, which has led to some people feeling that it is too easy, but the idea is to drive curiosity, and it's the puzzles which in fact are the centre of the title, and I think it's an absolutely ideal game for showing what you're doing and for sharing, which is particularly suited to game chat, although I have to say it's a little bit disappointing that they didn't include a multiplayer mode, since it would have been absolutely ideal for this as well. I think the gentle pace and the loads of content that seems to be within it, the fact that it's pure fun, you can ride waves, you can make colour and music, lots of very simple, instinctive things which are just enjoyable to play, and of course, it's got that flavour of a long in the making breakthrough game for the title. It's been 7 years since Crafted World emerged, and this to me has the same kind of philosophy as Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which is what if we just focused on truly amazing, surprising, delightful experiences and pack them into a smaller game. It also, alongside, has lots of neat bits which build on the lore of the Yoshi's Island characters, particularly the various monsters and villains that we've seen in the past, who now we get to explore and interact with, but also there is, I believe, a bit of backstory with Kamek and Bowser Jr. that is a bit of a deep cut for those who are keeping careful track of the Mario lore, which I must admit I don't. Now, in Switch 2's early months, there were a high proportion of players who are going to be very dedicated gamers. There are people who probably would have played prior Yoshi games, probably would have been more likely to have played Crafted World, and they would include older people who might have younger children. So there were people who would be interested in a Yoshi title, but not necessarily a Yoshi title just for the sake of it being a Yoshi title. I think they needed to sell this game based on its specific attributes. What there would have been a lower proportion of early on were just those highly casual Mario fans. Now, of course, they wanted to reach those through the film period and through the 40th anniversary, so you can understand the way that they approach the marketing, but as we'll get to, I think they made a few missteps along the way. First up, the title translation. The original game translates to Yoshi and the Indescribable Illustrated Encyclopedia, according to things that I've read, although obviously anyone in the comments who is familiar with Japanese might be able to offer a different title. However, I think this is a great title, despite the fact that it's a little bit too long-winded for Western shores, because it conveys three core aspects of the game. Indescribable suggests astonishing or inspiring and wonderful. Illustrated suggests the pictures and artistry, the colour pencil style. And encyclopedia suggests discovery, facts, study, getting really involved with these crazy animals. Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, on the other hand, conveys none of those things. Mystery is not the same as wonder. They're similar, I guess, but if you're looking at something mysterious, that suggests puzzlement as opposed to awe. And book, well, I love a book, but does it intrinsically appeal to audiences? Do people intrinsically look at the word book and think, oh, wow, wonder? I'm not necessarily sure that they do, particularly in the younger target audience that this game is ultimately going to be aiming for. I think there are other possibilities, and I've put some down here. So Yoshi's Astonishing Illustrated Menagerie, Yoshi and the Encyclopedia of Magical Creatures, Yoshi and the Picture Book of Wonders. I think there are lots of ways they could have gone, which at least could try to hit those 3 points that the Japanese title does, but which the Western title does not. Then there was the reveal slot. So they put this as the last major reveal during the Super Mario Bros. 40th anniversary section of the September Nintendo Direct. Now, the Mario 40th anniversary was a big focus on continuity. Yoshi here was presented as just part of the Mario universe, rather than taking any care to showcase the series' unique attributes particularly, and it wasn't even presented as some kind of breakthrough and new Yoshi game. It was really framed as just the next Yoshi game and the one for Switch 2. This meant that it was put alongside Super Mario Galaxy 1 Plus 2 and Mario Tennis Fever, and it was either overshadowed or at least competed with by those titles. I don't feel that they really took the effort to kind of show, look, this is how Yoshi steps apart from the Super Mario Bros. Property, because it was part of a Super Mario Bros. Anniversary, and it means that people were going to be relying on their past Yoshi experiences, and for many people on the Switch, that would have been Yoshi's Crafted World. Now, Crafted World is a decent enough game, but I don't really think it was the breakout hit that Woolly World was. It wasn't as well received and well regarded in many respects, and so I think for many people who have had a Switch experience of Yoshi, that probably put a ceiling on their appetite for a new Yoshi title, especially from the same developers. Now, I do think there are other ways that they could have taken this. For example, if they had done an August announcement video for the 30th anniversary of Yoshi's Island, if they had featured Takashi Tezuka, who is of course the key figure in the development of Yoshi. They could have promoted the history of these games, which would have tied into Nintendo Switch Online. They could have emphasized that it's been 7 years since the last game, and so they've taken their time to develop something new. They could have linked it to the way they approach Super Mario Bros. Wonder, with this focus on wonder and surprise. They could have started by focusing in on what is different about the game, the fact that you study creatures, not stomp on them, the fact that you get to enjoy these pictures rather than just selecting levels, and that as the creatures pop up, you can follow them to find new areas to explore, the fact that there's no death and no damage, the fact that it's about the joy of experimenting and you can name the animals and really get into the fun of it, the chance to share things in real life and on game chat. There are so many aspects of the game that could have been focused on if they had presented it as something new and exciting that these great legacy developers have put together. They could then have done the casual Mario fan focused follow-up trailer in September, but after they had given it a good whirl on its own. I think the idea here would have been to pitch to the dedicated Switch 2 audience first, and then try to scoop up the casual 40th anniversary fans, because if you think about it, back around August of 2025, most of the people owning a Switch 2, and therefore in a position to be excited for the game, would have been those dedicated fans. And yes, you might say that they wanted to appeal to people who might buy a Switch 2, but I think they were still in that early phase where they were not yet reaching different people yet. And also, I think as great as Yoshi is, it's not likely to be the kind of game that drives system purchases, but it can be the kind of game that makes people feel like their ownership of the system is going to be worthwhile because it's one of a number of really enjoyable core titles. Plus, it's all about setting the mood music for Nintendo this generation, and they could have emphasized the fact that they are still focused on innovation and creativity and fun and joy and wonder, as opposed to just making another in the line of Yoshi games. Now, the reveal trailer itself, I also think, in retrospect, was not the best at all. The first quarter of it, roughly, is all about Yoshi and then about the book falling from the sky, the book's name, the book's problem, it can't see the animals, blah-de-blah-de-blah. The book's chapters are shown at their most barren, so what you don't see from that initial trailer is that the chapter pages on the book actually fill up with animals, and you see their names, the names in fact that you've given to the creatures, and they keep changing and doing different things, and so they become ever more wonderful as you play around with the game. But of course, right at the beginning, you've just got the one animal and it's fairly barren, and so showing that does not really give a flavour of what it's like to interact with this book. Most of the gameplay, in fact, shows the lesser imaginative animals. The Crazy Daisy creature is fun, but it is basically just a flower that colours different flowers, and some of the utilizations are fairly limited. I'm not sure the dandelion one is the best. There are about 15 seconds at the end of that reveal trailer of the more diverse creatures, but you don't really get a sense of them. And also, in the way that it phrases it. It demystifies things. Hey, we found some dandelions. Well, no, the idea is that these aren't recognizable creatures. The idea is that they're completely different and they've got different properties and that you want to explore them. If you just name them as dandelions, well, that's a known thing, and that takes away from that sense of awe and wonder. I also think the way that the trailer talks gives a kind of tonal whiplash. The simple tone sounds like it's talking to a child, which is fine because that is consistent with the tone of Yoshi. But then there's stuff about how, oh, look, the creatures are absorbing nutrients, which to me does not sound particularly child friendly. And to be fair, I have seen it noted that the way that Mr. E is quite text heavy, despite the fact that the game appears to be focused towards younger children, is a bit of a mismatch. So part of it is built into the game, but nevertheless, I don't feel like they necessarily hit the target audience they wanted here, and it ends with a page-turning adventure awaits, which to me completely misses the point of what makes Yoshi and the Mysterious Book fun. And of course, it ain't the Mysterious Book, it is the animals and the interaction with them. Not mentioned at all in the trailer are that general focus on wonder, the different ways they approached a challenge, which I think could have forestalled some of the criticism the game received around launch. The fact that you can't personalize the animals by naming them, that was revealed later, but it wasn't revealed right at launch. And the fact that you can see the diverse animals in the world as they interact in different levels and on the chapter screens and so on. I also think, and this is kind of something which probably they couldn't avoid, but the pricing choices backfired a little bit for them here. So it's actually a $70 game physical, and that's the same tier as Donkey Kong Bonanza. But because they released it at the same time as their decision to adjust, in America at least, to having $10 cheaper digital titles, I think it's slightly communicated that the game has less content, because instead of people talking about this as being a $70 game with a $10 digital discount, instead it was framed as a $60 title, a cheaper title. And while that is true, it's not cheaper in the sense of it being a less full fleshed out game. It is completely a full game. It's just that the pricing has changed in the way they've structured it since Donkey Kong Bonanza was released. So what could they do to look to rescue this? Well, I think there's a few things that they might try. They need to think about the different fans that are going to be approaching this title. And for casual fans, I think they really need to get away from this stuff about the book and get on to the discovery, the astonishing animals, the fact that it's fun and delightful, and of course some of the puzzles. All of these are brilliant aspects of the title that deserve to be more tightly showcased. For families, I really think there is huge potential to show the fun and discovery alongside family members, with people talking through the game in real life and even potentially remotely through game chat. Plus, I think for the dedicated players, things like an Ask the Developer interview and focusing on the creative choices that went into this game and how it's a departure from previous Yoshi games while also deeply respecting and building on the lore of those titles, I think that is something that would be a huge game changer in the conversations around this title. Plus, I do think Nintendo would benefit a lot from giving a free DLC permitting multiplayer and preferably some kind of game share functionality, since I do think that it is a title that would suit this very well. At any rate, I am still only midway through the game. Perhaps I will get to a point where I realise that it's actually all going to fall apart, but I don't think so. I'm loving it so far, and I'd like to particularly shout out the many people who have suggested in the comments that I get into the title. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider checking out the Patreon, and if you'd like to like, subscribe and comment, it's very much appreciated. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.